Design Museum on the south bank of the Thames. The perfect location for a debate on how to help design and technology students become the creative problem solvers of tomorrow. We invited textiles teacher Lorraine John, Stuart Barker, who teaches electronics, Kevin Jones from the Specialist Schools Trust, and Gareth Stevens, Key Stage 3 strategy consultant at Harrow. They began by watching Programme 1 on taking a less formulaic approach to GCSE coursework.
Should students start by making an object, or should they start with a problem to solve?
Well, the design process can start anywhere, can't it? I mean, you know, and I think a lot of teachers, you know, are scared about that idea of having a lot of different projects within the same group, and therefore, unfortunately, we still go into a lot of schools where we do see a lot of very similar projects, and that cuts down the opportunity for creativity and ingenuity and innovation for young people because there's too many constraints.
But the temperature might still be the wrong temperature.
Okay, is there any reason why you need that to happen? Because the way we had it going seemed to be pretty perfect.
Well, it was, but I just thought I'd have a look, see if I could do it.
That's okay, just keep playing with it, see if it works. I mean, I don't want to, at the end of the day, it's your project.
It was interesting in the film to see you treading that delicate line between wanting to support a student, but also not wanting to over-direct them. I mean, is that something you find on a daily basis, that you're treading that line?
I think with the project in question, Fraser's moisture and temperature sensor, it was a pretty complex project. Almost could be entered for an AS level project. And I think in his case, he needed a reasonable element of support there.
Buzzer holes in the top so that doesn't get wet. Probes coming out the bottom, but they're not all in the model because the circuit's changed a bit since when I made the model.
So again, as we develop the project, the model may not be exactly like the final one because it shows how the coursework is a continual process of constantly keep changing as we're developing the circuit as well as the casing as well. I didn't stifle his creativity at all because he came up with the idea himself. I had to give him quite a lot of help actually to get the project finished and to get the circuit designed. But I think now he's got the project, he'll now be able to go on independently.
And your wire's quite stable, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you're going to combine that then with using more difficult threads?
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's really intriguing to see how much you emphasise exploration. You really want children to have fun, and you want your pupils to explore different ways of approaching designing.
It's just a matter of pushing each one as far as you can get them to go, and just knowing their projects and knowing how you're going to push each one on individually.
I think one of the important things there, though, Lorraine, is it's obvious that you've built up from Key Stage 3. You know, they've obviously come into your school and you've developed a culture of developing what design education is all about.
The exemplary material that we use is really probably one of the best ways of actually starting the students up when we see them in Year 10. And what we do is we guide them onto the portal by showing them, as you can see here, some examples of some of last year's projects.
She wouldn't show us any of the older people's works. I think it's so we didn't copy and we had our own ideas, but she wouldn't show past years pieces of work that they finished with.
What stopped me from watching both your, takes on that is the fact that you almost got the same reason for doing what you do. You say you don't want to show work from previous years because you want them to support their own creativity and individual approach, and you're saying that they need to see exemplars in order to support their individual approach. And I wonder what you thought about that.
My only thoughts are it's very, very difficult, I find, to give a student a blank sheet of paper and get to start a project. So we find one of the best ways in electronics, we have some very, very good past projects.
I never start my projects with showing previous projects because I'm always concerned they might want to make one just like it. I do actually give them glimpses of work as I feel necessary later on once their projects are underway, because it might be just a way of showing a particular way to develop something. But I just think it's far more exciting that it's totally theirs and they haven't got any preconceived ideas about anyone else's project. They may have seen things in display cabinets because I do have displays on all through the year, but it doesn't actually give them an opportunity perhaps to go and touch it and hold it, and so they're still going to really be starting from scratch on their own project. Yeah,
I was going to say, I mean, it was obvious from the programme, you had exemplar work around the classroom, so you had display work of setting a standard, and that's what exemplar work's about, isn't it? Setting a standard. It isn't about copying, setting a standard, and so students know what they've got to reach for.
It's a real issue at Key Stage 4, though, isn't it? This idea of mark chasing and the idea, you know, I've been into schools and I've asked students what they're doing, and they say, well, I'm on sheet 22 and I've got a gap here because I've got to put my Gantt chart there, and you realise that, you know, in a sense we're testing, we're valuing what we test, we're not testing what we value in some sense.
But we're actually not testing the students, we're testing the teachers.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and we're actually, teachers are very adept and have been very good over the last few years of teaching towards the exam.
What you need to do is to show in your project, to show the examiner how you've actually looked at different ways of overcoming the same problem. So that's how you get the access to higher marks, because you've shown I could do it this way and I could also do it that way. So you've thought about different solutions to the problem.
We really must counter that balance between jumping through the hoops and teaching design. And, you know, we need to have a passion about what design is and have a vision of teaching design actually will still get the marks.
Yeah. I know in my experience, I know it is possible to get an A star at GCSE within the coursework without much of an element of creativity in there.
And that's dreadful, you know. But you're dead right, you're dead right.
I think it's also important as well that if we're going to carry on encouraging the creative aspect of design technology, the exam boards then do start to give the students credit for that element of creativity within their design portfolios.
Yeah, and we are beginning to see that because it's a slow process. It's a slow process.
It is a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, you know, you can't have students taking risks unless they know they're going to be rewarded for that risk taking, because we know that risk taking sometimes results in failure.
I think it's the teacher has got to do a bit of thinking beforehand and know how far those risks can go. You can't just let children come into the classroom and take any risk.
Yeah.
But they're quite calculated risks, really.
Well, for some person's risk-taking is another person's, you know, quite pedestrian work, isn't it? And we have to be aware of that, you know, in the quest for originality, some students will produce something which is original for them, but might not be original in the great scheme of things.
I think the digital camera has great use because they can quickly snap lots of photographs and lay them out and show how they've thought through their development without writing. Some students prefer to write. That's fine by me. Some like to write, some like to draw, some will take photographs. They're all equally as good.
Students should be allowed almost like personalised learning angle on it, design as they want to. You know, it's about being individual, isn't it?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, again, all the research talks about boys like to get onto a making, and we used to interpret that with, well, they didn't like designing, but why can't they design through making?
I think it's a matter of developing each individual child. If they really want to be very creative and do lots of drawing, then that's fine. If they love IT and that really moves them forward, then do that.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting talking about learning through making. A lot of our students only really get a concept of their project when they actually get to the modelling stage, and then they really start to see this is what my project's actually going to be about.
Yeah.
And they've got to be aware that it is a prototype, and they mustn't think they've got to actually carry on in the way they thought they were going to design it, that they can change it at any stage and keep developing. And that's so important to let them continue to develop that project.
They do constantly say, don't they, is this what it's going to look like? We say, well, it might do, but it might look totally different again. But as long as the evidence is there through the design process, then that's what it's all about.
And that's good designing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good design.
It's interaction between all the different stages.
I'm using lights in this top here, which is for my wall hanging, just as a smart product, which is different. And the pressure switch then uses by his head to turn on and off.
It's an easier way to teach if pupils are all learning in the way they want to learn and the way they do best. Then you have a much better relationship with them and your results just move on so quickly.
Well, I would agree entirely, but a lot of teachers wouldn't agree with you. They'd think, whoa, that's a bit scary. Yes. We can't let them all do that.
Subject leaders say, what, you mean give them the key to the resource cupboard, you know? And I think that's another issue, is that, you know, technicians should be encouraged, departments should be encouraged to build up a bank of all sorts of different weird components and materials. A huge range, you know, from local industries, stuff, skips at local, you know, manufacturing industries and stuff.
Some pupils learn through just handling components and in obviously in my area,
what I was going to
fabrics.
say about products as well, not just components, you know, having stocks of products so students can handle professionally designed products and start to analyse and scratch them. You know, why is that button there not 2 millimetres to the left? Because there'll be a reason. And that 2 millimetres is really important.
Disassembly is a really good way to teach.
Yeah. Absolutely, it's a foundation to them really understanding what design's about, and you know, particularly in textile design as well. The emotional aspect of design, I think, is really important. That I think a lot of schools miss out on. You know, every product that's been designed generates an emotion inside us. You know, and why is that? And can we design emotions into products, what designers do? And I think students need to understand that as well.
It's a motion sensor for the army. It's disguised as a rock. And what will happen is when somebody triggers the pressure pad, an alarm and an LED will start going off to tell that somebody's coming towards them so that they can react.
How did you come up with the idea for it?
Basically because I'm part of the army cadets, they don't really have enough for detecting when people are coming.
One of the things that still is lacking, I think, in a lot of schools is getting students to actually annotate and talk about judgments rather than just facts. A lot of design ideas are annotated with this is this, this is it, and they're just facts. Not about this is designed like this because it suits the lifestyle of the person I'm designing for.
And also in textiles it brings in the theory that's needed really, so they might experiment with one particular fibre of a thread and then try another because the tension just didn't work, and then they start to build up a knowledge of natural and synthetic and man-made fibres, and it all starts to have a really good meaning, and then they can make good choices. So they would have a task sheet, a monthly task sheet that they keep in their folders. So they would see how much progress they're making and at what kind of grade. They would know what they're expected to do in a month, and then they would have a class target of a double lesson, what they're expected to complete in the double lesson. So it's freedom within quite tight constraints, I guess, really. I think you do need to stop and teach and then go back, let them do some more experimenting. I think it needs to be very much divided up and have quite a lot of structure. Maybe the pupils don't see all that structure, but the structure is there.
Yeah, I think intermediate deadlines are really important in terms of coursework, and certainly again for boys, looking at achievement of boys, we tend to say in May, June time, we've got a big project now and the deadline's in February, and most boys say, oh, that's great, that's a long time away. But to give them those intermediate, that structure you were talking about, Lorraine, it's really important.
I think it's important to make the link between successful assessment systems and creativity as well. If a student knows what they've got to do and they know that they can look forward to having some constructive feedback regularly, they feel safe, they feel more confident, and then they go on to be more creative. What is it that you'd like your students to be able to do in a year or two time that they can't do now?
I think one of the things that I'm really building towards is making sure that my students are independent learners. They know where to find information, they know about the design process, and it's important that they've got those skills so when they go out into the real world they can be independent.
It's a real challenge, and I think we need to rise to that challenge at Key Stage 4 now, particularly because we're an options subject. We need to make the courses more exciting, and we need to aspire to that vision statement, the importance of D&T statement, which is in the national curriculum, if we are going to survive.
And I think we're the one subject area that can engage all abilities so easily. They've all got something really good to offer. It's an area to be positive. But they may have come from other subject areas and perhaps feel quite negative about themselves, and they can come along to tech and actually feel good.
I mean, for me, the major project is about a culmination of 5 years of design thinking and actually trying to educate young people in what all the wonders of what design and technology is. It's a wonderfully passionate, exciting, stimulating subject, and the project is the one big example to put it all together.